Get your lube out. We are about to farm the P. Diddy trial. Freak-offs, abuse claims, and emotional testimony.
Disgusting sex acts, a wild scene, and extreme violence. Day 2 of Sean Combs' criminal trial saw the beginning of the long-awaited testimony of Cassandra Ventura, the star witness of this case. We bring on law and crime reporter Elizabeth Milner, who is once again in the courtroom, to give us a sense of what exactly happened today in court. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law and Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. Hey everybody, this is another Law and Crime legal alert. If you received Depo-Provera birth control shots and were later diagnosed with a brain or spinal tumor called meningioma, you may be eligible for a lawsuit. Morgan & Morgan is investigating claims that patients were
I'm being sold to already.
It was blockbuster sex trafficking trial unfolded with definitely gripping and often harrowing testimony from his former girlfriend, Cassandra Ventura, who took the stand as the prosecution's star witness. For nearly 6 hours, she testified. And I'm going to tell you right now what she testified to based on what we were reading in that courtroom.
Who's the creepy individual who created this art style? It's the most uncanny, off-putting depictions. Like, is this the best we've got?
It was something. It wasn't just alleged psychological torment, physical abuse, sexual exploitation at the hands of Sean Combs. Now, remember, she is coming in there, what, 8 and a half?
I mean, the writing was on the wall, dude. Calling himself Puff Daddy? Gay. You are gay. That is a homosexual thing to do. Nothing wrong with it. I'm just saying.
Half months pregnant, coming in after the testimony of 2 other witnesses. There is a lot to get into. We are going to give you a comprehensive breakdown of every major moment from today's proceedings because, as you know, there are no cameras in that courtroom. There is no audio of what happened. But we got the next best thing. We got Law and Crimes reporter Elizabeth Milner, who was inside that courtroom witnessing firsthand everything that happened today. Elizabeth, thank you so much for coming on. I know this has already been an exhausting day, particularly about what you heard in that courtroom. We will get to that. Before we even get into the testimony, real quick, is it just insane out there again? Are we seeing tons of people, reporters?
Dude, if Diddy gets off, there's just no way.
Spectators, just tell us what the scene looks like right now.
The scene honestly kind of mirrored day 1, which was opening statement.
I think those drawings are supposed to capture how a courtroom is a liminal space of both the physical and spiritual. Well, it's doing a good job.
And, you know, day 2 was really no different. A lot of people trying to get inside that courthouse, a lot of people trying to get inside that courtroom, especially for the big testimony that we were all expecting today. Of course, that being Cassie Ventura taking the stand. And so it was a lot of people just trying to kind of weasel their way in through. I was able to get inside that courtroom really just with the luck and a prayer and also a little connections, which always helps in this case. But really, it's just madness over here at the courthouse. I mean, there's media campouts just extending across the block. A lot of public interest in this case.
What's his defense? I didn't do it. He roofied the baby oil. There's CCTV 4K camera footage of him dragging Cassie around a fucking hotel lobby.
Either want to get a glimpse of either Diddy, his family, just be inside.
No, this is the shit that radicalizes me and makes me think we need to bring back a monarchy. We need to put this in front of the king, the god emperor, and he needs to decide what the proper punishment is. He's innocent until proven guilty. No. Hello, is this the base department?
That courtroom, just be inside the courthouse, even if they're in the overflow room and able to kind of watch the proceedings that way. But there's definitely a lot of interest in the case, and I don't expect that to die down even throughout this week.
No, and this was expected with Cassandra Ventura taking the stand. Now, before we get to her testimony, the day actually started with finishing up the testimony, the cross-examination of Daniel Phillip. That is that male escort, male performer, I should say, who began his testimony yesterday.
Daniel Phillip? Because there was another male performer. It was a white dude who talked about Diddy parties before any of this came to the surface.
Talked about how Diddy allegedly paid him to have sex with Cassandra Ventura, all while Diddy was not only watching but recording. And this happened to have, apparently happened several times.
And he's a cuckold? There's no coming back from that.
Again, Combs is charged with racketeering conspiracy, sex trafficking, transportation, to engage in prostitution. So we're talking about coerced sexual performances. Key witness here. Elizabeth, what came out of cross-examination today of this witness?
Well, the cross-examination was continued by Xavier Donaldson, and it was interesting to kind of see him in action even yesterday as well as today, because he's a little feisty when it came to this particular witness. He was essentially questioning him on, returning to the Gramercy Park Hotel. Why was Diddy sitting in the corner? Why did he notice that specifically? He was asked about what was going on while he and Cassie were having sex. Donaldson asked, did Cassie take the lead? He says, he being Daniel Phillip, said they both did their thing. He was asked, was Cassie drunk? Daniel Phillip responded no. Was Cassie high? Daniel Phillip responded no. Did Cassie pay him or pay for a hotel? Daniel Phillip responded saying he just didn't know. They were talking about the alleged assault that had happened at Cassie.
Oh, I got the picture in my head. Imagine getting paid by a man to fuck their woman as he's in the corner cranking his hog. That's got to inflict some serious psychic damage.
Cassie's apartment, something that Cassie herself had even testified about as well too, and so essentially a lot of these questions back and forth were just pretty much to kind of get
Sigmund Freud speaks about this.
Clarity. There were some points in the cross-examination I was kind of like, where is this going? But maybe from the defense's perspective, they were essentially trying to make that argument that Cassie she was coherent. She wasn't under the influence of any type of drugs or alcohol when these freak-offs were occurring, or when these encounters were occurring, I should say. What was interesting about Daniel Phillip when he had actually walked into the courtroom, something that a lot of us in the press kind of noticed, is he walked inside with his sunglasses on, which, for the most part, we haven't seen many witnesses do that. Only 3 have taken the stand so far, but it was definitely an interesting moment.
I'd be ashamed too.
Earlier this morning, it wasn't raining just yet, but it wasn't exactly sunny too, so we were kind of like, why is he wearing sunglasses? And even when he got off the witness stand, he put the sunglasses right back on, and just walked out of the courtroom. But another interesting point, Jesse, that they were kind of talking about today was talking about an incident, or not even an incident per se, but talking about a moment in December of 2023. And this is when Xavier Donaldson brought up Daniel's friend named Malia. And essentially, they were questioned, or Daniel Phillip was questioned about when he saw Cassie outside of the Dream Hotel here in downtown New York City. Apparently, Daniel Phillip had told this friend Malia about his relationship, and I put that in quotations even here in my notes, about his relationship with Cassie. Said that Cassie asked to call him later on to meet her. The defense says it was for another experience, and Phillip said no, that wasn't necessarily the case. The defense said so Cassie called for a one-on-one after she wasn't with Diddy any longer. And so then another...
What? She called the male prostitute for another session? Did I get that right?
Another interesting point that was brought up was just that Daniel Phillip had met with federal prosecutors in March of just this year, so just a couple months back, and they were talking about...
Did I get that right, or am I a moron?
The case, the defense said so Cassie called for a one-on-one after she wasn't with Diddy any longer. And so then another interesting point that was brought up was just that Daniel Phillip had met with federal prosecutors in March of just this year, so just a couple...
What do you mean by that?
...months back, and they were talking about essentially kind of what one thing I kind of remember from Daniel Phillip's testimony.
She called the escort after she wasn't with Diddy. What did she call the escort for? Just to chop it up? Hey, how you doing? Or was this a booty call?
Testimony is just kind of the way he would talk about Cassie per se. Like, for example, yesterday he had said that Cassie was one of the most beautiful women that he had ever seen. He had also said had Cassie given him a chance that he would absolutely date her. So it seems like he kind of had more on his end, more of a platonic feeling towards Cassie, especially kind of in that need to kind of protect her. So, Phillip said that, Daniel Phillip, said that he wasn't necessarily jealous seeing Diddy have sex with Cassie, but he had allegedly told federal prosecutors that he was in October 7th of 2024, and this is where a sidebar had happened, and so...
This is just too much information.
After the sidebar was over, Daniel Phillip was questioned again, would he feel jealous because he had liked Cassie romantically? And so Daniel Phillip said he didn't recall saying that to prosecutors. And so when the redirect happened, Maureen Comey just really kind of had to redirect all of the cross-examination.
Bro got called to cuck Diddy as he jerked off in the corner and fell in love with Cassie.
All of the back and forth, kind of back to a focus. So she asked, about Diddy directing and why that wasn't brought up necessarily. Said that Diddy had directed Cassie to give him, oral, rub baby oil on him. They were asked, Daniel Phillip was asked about money, given more money.
Just give him the max sentence and be done with it. Anybody with that much baby oil is a certified freako fuck.
For sex, $3,800 more than he would be if he were to come over to dance, or for time, I should say. He said he was paid anywhere between $700 to $5,000, $6,000 just for sex, and then essentially he was paid $0 if he didn't have sex with Cassie or in the room with Diddy. And so, during the redirect, Daniel Phillip said Cassie normally didn't respond to his text messages, but then there was a point that, after Diddy had beat Cassie, that Diddy was actually trying to get Cassie to continue to perform sexually with Daniel Phillip, and said that Daniel couldn't get an erection after kind of hearing the slaps going on in a nearby room. He said he essentially just wanted to hug her because he could tell that she was shaking and that she was afraid, and that pretty much reaffirmed that Diddy beat Cassie.
You know what the problem is? I mean, I could have called this from a mile away. They're not looks matched. Cassie mogs Diddy in every single photo.
Essentially, and even called her the B word. And so then they were talking under the recross. He was asked again about, text messages that he said he didn't receive responses to. And then some of the exhibits were showing that, Cassie had responded very casually to some of those messages. So some of those were pretty much the big takeaways from Daniel Phillip's recross, redirect, recross. And so, and then that essentially wrapped him up as a witness. He was off the stand probably within an hour of when court had began, and he put on his shades and just walked out of the courtroom. It seemed like Diddy was kind of, obviously he was listening at every single witness who had taken the stand thus far in this case, but definitely Diddy had his eyes on Daniel Phillip, was paying very close attention to what he said, again, participating very much so in his defense by jotting notes down, handing them off to his attorney, listening to Xavier Donaldson do the cross-examination and even the recross as well, too. And so definitely Diddy's eyes were very laser focused on this witness and the following witness, too, who we all
It would be a shame if that guy just disappears randomly.
know to be Cassie Ventura.
Yeah, it seems to me the defense was really trying to hone in the fact, well, who paid you, what, $700?
I feel like this guy needs security detail.
$6,000 an episode. Well, it was Cassandra Ventura. She was the one in control. She was the one who was enjoying this. She was a partner in what was going on and not a victim. That there was this text message, I think, that was sent to that you told them both that you love them. So it wasn't anything nefarious that was going on, that she was being forced into this criminal sexual arrangement, but she was a willing participant, and it just might be a kinky, sexy episode, but not a crime. So I kind of understand where the defense was going by ultimately cross-examining him. But now we got to talk about Cassandra Ventura. So before we even get into the substance of what she had to say, and there is a lot to get there, she walks in, okay? Tell us what the environment was like with her walking in, and how did she appear, and did she ever look at Sean?
Okay, sure. Maybe he can convince people that he and Cassie had a weird-ass marriage. But what about all the other fuck shit? It's a great point. It only goes so far. I mean, the abuse, he was caught red-handed. That footage is crazy.
Sean Combs, either when she got on the stand, during her testimony, did he ever look at her? Paint the picture of what that was like before we even get into the substance of what she had to say.
Yeah, it was definitely a moment a lot of us were kind of expecting. We were all thinking it was going to be like a pin drop moment, but really it kind of happened within the blink of an eye of her coming in to the courtroom. So essentially,
You guys need to talk about the oil in the next 2 minutes or I'm going to crash out.
She walks inside the courtroom. She's wearing a long brown dress. She is very, very visibly pregnant to a point where I thought, oh my goodness, just stand by, everyone. It was, that was very apparent. That was very obvious. So she kind of walked in. It's not like she was smiling necessarily or looking at familiar faces that she may have known in her past, i.e. Diddy's family, and waving at them. That was not the case at all. She kept laser focused. She walked just straight to the witness stand.
Dude, look at that guy's jawline. Imagine mewing that hard in the law room, courtroom art.
Had kind of escorts take her over there, but she didn't.
The law room, dude, I need another espresso. Yeah, that room where they do the fucking law, Order.
Like look in Diddy's direction. From what I could see, I didn't see her once kind of look over or give him an eye or a look or anything like that. She just walked immediately to the witness stand. She raised her right hand. She swore the oath to testify. And even for the duration of the the duration of her testimony today, for the most part, I didn't even catch her glimpsing at the defense table. For the most part, she kept laser focused on Emily Johnson as Emily Johnson was asking her questions. Probably the only people outside of Emily Johnson and possibly even her husband that she was eyeing in the courtroom was probably little moments at the jury, when they came in back from their breaks or a quick bathroom break and that type of sort, and it was just a very kind of like faint smile, and so for the most part, from what I could see of her, it didn't seem like she kind of paid Diddy any type of mind. But you can only guess how she's feeling being inside that courtroom. Us as reporters, we're all jotting down these notes. Diddy's.
I need a refresher of when this happened. I made a video on it. 2007, when she was 19.
Families inside that courtroom listening to all of this testimony. Then you have Cassie's side of the family, who's inside that courtroom as well, that even including her husband Alex, as well as her brother. I believe her mother was inside that courtroom as well as Cassie's attorney Doug Wigder. So for the most part, I didn't see her, even when she had exited the courtroom, even looking at the defense's side or anything like that. And so she was there to do what she had needed to do, and that was to testify. To me, I wasn't catching that she was there really for a reunion or any type of sorts. But it's interesting because, according to the defense, the last time Diddy and Cassie were in a room together or in the same vicinity as each other was Kim Porter's memorial back in 2018. That's what the defense said in their opening statement yesterday. And so, this was a moment that I'm sure she had waited for a long time, probably didn't want to be very close to giving birth or anything like that.
When Cassie was 19 in 2006, P. Diddy was 37 years old. Foul.
While she's taking the stand, but it's been a long time since Diddy and Cassie were in the same room with each other, let alone the same vicinity as each other.
Right. So when she started testifying, my understanding, explained that when she first met Sean Combs and began a romantic relationship with him, it was good at first, right? I mean, talk to us about the beginning of the relationship and how she described him, because I think that's important in order to understand the context, and also maybe a potentially to be used by the prosecution and potential win for the defense.
Why is a large age gap in Hollywood normalized? I'm sorry to break it to you, but if you're asking that question, I would reevaluate how you think about things.
Yeah, so, the questioning was done by Emily Johnson. One of the first few questions that Emily Johnson had asked Cassie was, how old are you? So Cassie is now 38 years old. So I say that just in the context of when she met Diddy. She met Diddy around 2005. That was 20 years ago. The prosecution and even the defense had said that she was just 19 years old when she had met Diddy. She had said she had signed with Bad Boy in 2006, and she had signed actually a 10 albums.
It's actually illegal for me to answer that question.
Deal. She said she knew Diddy and remembered him. Well, I say Diddy, but she referred to him as Sean throughout her entire testimony. But she knew who she calls Sean as somebody who was larger than life, but didn't necessarily know too much about him personally. So, the prosecution was asking, when did she release her album? That was in August of 2006. But then surprisingly, no more albums came after that. Remember, she signed a 10-album deal, yet it was only one album that was released, as well as a mixtape too. But she said, after she had signed with Bad Boy, their relationship was pretty platonic.
You know what song slaps by Cassie? Me and You. Absolute banger.
And this is when we, in the gallery, as well as the jurors too, were shown photos of her and Sean together. Another photo from the 2006 BET Awards with Cassie, Kim Porter, Sean Combs, and then another friend, all just kind of posing together on what looked like to be a red carpet. She was asked about Kim Porter specifically because at this time, Kim Porter and Diddy were still technically in a relationship. They were obviously co-parenting together because they had kids together at this point. And so when asked about Kim Porter, Cassie referred to her as Diddy's or Sean Combs' ex, as well as the mother of his children. She said, even after signing with Bad Boy and stuff like that, that she had seen Sean a number of times, or a few times at the clubs. They were shown, the jury was shown another photo of a potential witness, that being Carrie Morgan, who was Cassie's best friend around that time frame. Diddy, Cassie, and then another friend on the couch. And this was pretty important. This was from her 21st birthday, and so this was something that was definitely talked about while the prosecution was kind of establishing the foundation between Sean Combs and Cassie. And so during this birthday trip this weekend, that Diddy had actually kissed her in the bath.
Now that you pointed out, she's saying every single sentence, and now I can't unhear it.
Bathroom, and that's pretty important because at the time they weren't romantically involved. At this time, Diddy essentially just was an executive at the record label that she had worked at, obviously that being the one he had founded, being Bad Boy Records. And so she said after he had kissed her, it was actually kind of confusing. She said she was pretty young because, again, at that time she was just 21 years old. She said she was a new artist who didn't really know the lay of the land, and she said that she was pretty naive around that time. And she said even after the kiss that she had ran out of the bathroom. And so after the two had kissed on her 21st birthday, they had seen each other a couple of times afterwards, and then even went to visit Sean Combs at the Trump Hotel after she was invited by him specifically. She said that, for the most part, Diddy called all the shots of her music career. So when she went over to the hotel, she really thought
it's just a problematic relationship. The guy's in direct control of your career.
She was going to be talking about music, talking about, her recordings and that sort. So she said she was nervous to visit Diddy.
Cells seething. Chads on top.
At the hotels, but just was essentially excited to talk about her career and where everything was going. But then, that's not what happened in this hotel visit. She said essentially that she was introduced to the concept of oral sex while at this hotel. She said that, Sean Combs had given her oral, and that it made her, that he kind of made her feel crazy for not reciprocating that. And so, she didn't do that because she said she was in a relationship at the time with somebody else. She said she felt sneaky, but she essentially just wanted to be around him because he was exciting, he was entertaining.
Yo! She got eaten out by P. Diddy and cheated on her man?
And she said that, it made her feel kind
of... Not illegal. But morally, you're in the belly of the beast, bucko.
Special because not everybody was getting that time with Sean Combs. And even just think about that time frame. This was Puffy. This was Puff Daddy. This was Diddy. This was somebody who was a big...
Stop. It's so zesty.
Name. And so from her perspective, I can kind of see a little bit why she was a little excited to kind of go over there again under the guise.
Look at that fucking head, bro.
That she was going to be talking about music, and that's not essentially what had happened. And then the prosecution talked about this trip to Miami, and this trip was also pretty important because this was a trip that they had taken. Carrie Morgan, Cassie's best friend at the time, was there. Dallas Austin, who was a music producer, was there as well too, and she referred to Dallas.
His fucking head is like a basketball backboard. If you aim for either corner, that fucking shit is going in.
Austin as a friend. You'll remember Dallas Austin because he was on that People and Places list that the jurors were given during jury selection process. And so she thought initially that she was going to Miami for work, and a flyer was even made about her doing kind of a club appearance, a booking appearance down there. But instead, she was having sexual intercourse with Sean Combs on a boat. She said even later that night, that's when she started She took a drug, and that was what they called a blue dolphin pill, was essentially ecstasy. She said she was given the ecstasy, actually, by Sean Combs, and that she had never taken a drug intentionally before. And she said intentionally because she said she unintentionally accidentally drank a drug from somebody else.
Any blue dolphin enjoyers in chat?
Some other time, but that was the first time she intentionally did it. And again, that was kind of her first introduction to it. She said ecstasy kind of made her feel euphoric, and then us in the gallery, as well as the jurors, we saw photos of Diddy and Cassie on that boat together, and that's the boat where the two first had engaged in sexual intercourse for the first time. And then even after that trip, that's kind of where everything changed. She said essentially that they spent a lot of time together, and that she became one of Diddy's girlfriends. Now, at the time, she initially really just thought the two were monogamous because they spent so much time together. And she said,
just part of the harem. That's crazy. She thought she was the main girl, but she was just another side hoe.
And afterwards, they didn't go public for years after that, because publicly he was still dating Kim Porter. Even after this trip, she broke ties with her old management, and she said post-Miami trip, that's when she started falling in love with Sean Combs. She said she referred to herself as his shadow, because that's how often the two were together. But she said that Sean Combs was her first adult relationship. We were later shown an exhibit. It was the photo of the two of them at a strip club in New York City together in Halloween of 2007. And we were shown photos of Sean Combs and Cassie in the back of a car together at their relationship. So you could really kind of see from her perspective, from what I saw from the exhibit, her just kind of smiling, her being what I perceived to be excited to be there again. She looks the same, right? But she was a little younger back then. And so after this trip, she said she was still enamored by Sean Combs, at first. But she said over time, that's when she started to kind of experience a different side of him. And for one example that she had used, it was like the physical abuse and even the controlling nature of Diddy, the way that she had looked, who she was speaking to and talking to, essentially that Diddy would call her every single day.
Why does bro look guilty? I don't know. Every pic of him, I'm like, this motherfucker.
All day, every day. It was either through text, calls, and then later on FaceTime, because back then, we didn't.
Why do Americans go to strip clubs with their girlfriends? Explain. I mean, who doesn't love booba and wings, am I right?
Necessarily have FaceTime, because you have to remember, just in the context of everything, that this, their relationship was a little bit a while ago, nearly almost 20 years ago, the start of it, I should say. And so, if there were times that she didn't answer the phone call, he would call her repeatedly. If she didn't answer the phone call, his staff would call her, and this staff included the assistants, the security. Said the staff would even go so far as to locate her in person if she didn't answer her phone. And she said that Sean Combs's or Diddy's moods
Thanks, Obama.
impact her very greatly. She said she would. She said when she would be abused, it wasn't really about her. She said there was physical and psychological abuse. She said even if she didn't smile the right way that he had wanted her to, he would say things along the lines of, watch your face.
All right, so they're laying the groundwork for the abusive nature of this relationship and how it started as an innocent executive producer, manager, to a new young singer, and then a boat party, and then drugs. And then the degeneracy spiral begins.
Watch your mouth. And essentially, Diddy would tell her kind of who to be. And then that's how we kind of slowly started getting into more just of the relationship between Cassie and even Diddy's staff members, including his security team, who was around 24/7. Cassie named off names like D-Rock, Uncle Paulie, Bounds, Malik. When the assistants were named, it was important names like Christina Cora, David James, Neil Dominic. And so that's when we started to kind of get a glimpse a little bit into just her relationship with Diddy's staff too.
And a lot of things to break down there, right? I'm actually going to do a sidebar episode where I'm going to take Ventura's testimony and say how it actually matches up to the elements of the crimes that Diddy's charged with. But, talking about staff members, that definitely.
You think bro read a single book behind him? Or did he just absorb it by being in the presence of it and it went straight to his dome?
Goes to racketeering, right? This common enterprise, allegedly using staff members and associates and chiefs of staff to further his criminal activity, to keep tabs on Cassandra.
Rich people buy everything in bulk, 100 crates of water, 100 crates of cans of beans. So 1,000 bottles is just convenient if you use it every time. Bro's running defense for the baby oil.
Ventura, when you talk about controlling the way she looks and what she does.
And I only ask because that's how I read.
Control, power dynamics, that goes to the overall theme of force, fraud, coercion, of sex trafficking. Very, very important. Again, I'm going to do a sidebar on that tomorrow. We have to talk now about the freak-offs.
It's about time.
Okay, because that was a central theme of her testimony. All right, so the freak-offs make up the racketeering charge.
What a Looney Tunes ass term to describe the hedonism, the Sodom and Gomorrah activity.
Freak-offs make up the sex trafficking charge. I read about it. I think that this was incredibly graphic but important testimony. So if we're saying that she was doing things against her will and that she was being forced to do it, Elizabeth, I'm going to turn it over to you. What did she say about the freak-offs? What did she say about these sexual episodes?
Episodes, more like marathons.
Yeah, it was definitely a lot of graphic details that
Diddy was trying to goon himself into a new state of consciousness.
were a lot to kind of handle. When I was sitting in that courtroom, there were just moments where I was just like, oh my goodness, can we go for a break? Something like that. But again, I kind of have to commend Cassie for, being so calm, cool, and collected. There were emotional moments that she kind of teared up a little bit, and I'll get into that in just a sec. But as far as, these freak-offs, she said there was even prep time, or she had to prep for these essentially. She said that, Sean Combs would make her get her nails done and they had to be a certain way, and that included white nails or French tips for the freak-offs. She had said that there was even discussion possibly about, breast implants as well too, that he had made comments about her physical shape, her working out, keeping up appearances. She had to get tan, she had to get waxed. So there was a lot of physical preparation when it came to just how she would appear, because according to her, Diddy controlled every aspect of it, from the way she looked, the way she talked, how she even performed within these sessions or freak-offs, because there's even a difference right there where a session was just inside the freak-off, where it was just like one moment that, this encounter would happen, then they would take a break, go on to another moment, and that might not even be the entire freak-off. She said sometimes they would do 3 or 4 sessions just in one freak-off, and so
the freak-offs are divided into chapters.
The imagery is it was really just a lot. And so essentially, she described it.
Well, please do tell.
First as, that Diddy just wanted this to kind of be a fantasy. He wanted to watch, and that Diddy introduced her to this concept of swinging. And so there was a point where, they were talking about it initially as just kind of voyeurism, where Diddy kind of would just watch.
Yo!
I thought Bear was down here.
No. We're talking Diddy trial.
We're talking buy some merch.
That's right. That's right.
Look at this. Fire.
That is fire.
Fire. I work out in this. I teach in this. I do all things in this.
I got you right here. Ready? If you want some merch, boom. It's right there.
Whoa, I like that. You're ready to go.
Yeah, it's right there.
Hell yeah. What's the other one? This is Alpha? Sigma male is really who I am truly, but today I needed to be Alpha, so I had to switch it up.
Just gotta switch it up sometimes, that's it.
Where, they were talking about it initially as just kind of voyeurism, where Diddy kind of would just watch. She said she was pretty shocked that he was kind of interested in this, but she said she essentially just didn't want to upset.
Many such cases. He's interested in voyeurism. I just like to watch. Red flag. If you, as a woman, ever come in contact with that, how do you immediately not run away? From a predator versus prey standpoint, as a man, sometimes the most predatorial behavior disguises itself in a prey activity. Watching, not participating. That's next level evil shit.
At him. She said as far as the freak-offs go, that she was introduced to them in the first 6 months to a year of their relationship that they were doing this together. The other person would normally be a stranger, that being an escort or a male dancer. She was just 22 years old when she was first introduced to it, so very, very young. She said she agreed to even do it because she just wanted to make him happy.
It's a power and control thing. I simply will never understand that. How are you getting off?
She asked why she agreed.
We don't have to break down the logistics of being a cuck. We can just ask Sneeko.
She was asked why would she agree to do it, and Cassie at that moment said, "Great question." And so the first freak off, she said, happened at his LA home in the bedroom. She said they kind of referred to this person as the first escort because she didn't remember his name, thought that he was a stripper from Vegas, knew that the escort was paid to have intercourse with her. She said during...
I don't understand this. I thought prostitutes and escorts were illegal. Where's the enforcement of the law? I feel like escorts are just 1984 double-speak ass fucking career paths. You're a whore. No, I'm an escort. You're not paying to have sex with me. You're paying for my time. Huh?
Her first freak off, she took ecstasy. She drank alcohol even before it had started, something that she had even talked about in her civil claim against Combs that was later settled. They showed a photo to the gallery just of this particular first escort because we didn't even know his name, but it was a black man. He had dreads. He had an earring in his left ear. It looked kind of like a driver's license photo, but even throughout the course of her testimony today, he was just referred to as the first escort. She said that Sean Combs would...
Is this what too much porn does to a motherfucker? They just get absolutely one-shot by it and have to become demons IRL?
Tell her to wear masks, and she wore heels during this. That Diddy kind of directed everything, including the lighting, putting the oil on the escort and vice versa. So essentially, Cassie and this escort would rub baby oil on each other. And so,
Bro was his own lighting grip. Hold on, we got the key light, the fill light. Oh, we need a backlight for sure. Somebody get the bounce board.
I was talking before about kind of the difference between the sessions and the freak-offs. So again, those sessions were just kind of a portion of the freak-offs. But these escorts were paid thousands of dollars to do this. She said...
But what's crazy is if you film it, then it's considered legal. You ever think about that? You can hire someone for sex and film it, and that's fine. But you can't just hire someone for sex. What are we talking about here?
That she had to, in order to kind of do these freak-offs, she would essentially have to get high just so that way she didn't feel much. But she said that it made her feel dirty. She said that...
Oh, of course it did! I mean, essentially you're being pimped out by Nietzsche's depiction of the Antichrist.
Right after her first one, Diddy soon proposed another freak-off, and she felt like she couldn't say no because she didn't want to make him upset, said that he would get angry and his moods would change if she told him no. And then after the first freak-off that she did, they started to become more frequent. And
so what I don't understand is, why don't people just, leave the situation? I know I'm speaking from a place of privilege, talking to a computer screen. I'm not really in any dire situations. People say the mood can change, right? They get angry, they get abusive. What if you just disappear, you just run and you don't come back? You just get out of the situation. Well, in this case, I'm pretty sure he was putting hits on people, so maybe that was part of it. I'm just saying in other situations.
By frequent, she said that they would occur pretty much weekly, and those went on for years. She said her final freak-off wasn't until 2017, 2018, which is still relatively close to this time period, kind of right now. She said for the most part she didn't get much sleep during these freak-offs, but drugs kept help her stay awake, such as cocaine, such as Molly, MDMA, or ecstasy as well too, all that were given by Sean Combs. She said Sean Combs would decide, he would be the one to decide when these freak-offs would end. And she said that it was impossible essentially to remember the amount of freak-offs that she even did because she was pretty much doing a whole bunch of drugs, and they were so frequent for the most part. And she said that she felt, humiliated, and that she was all that that this was all that she was good for.
This is rough, dude.
And this was an important part in the testimony because this was the moment that she started tearing up. She pretty much had testified that she was being objectified during this, that Diddy would get so mad that if she didn't want to participate in this, that his eyes would go black. That's how mad he would get. And she said the only
losing count of the freak-offs is wild.
Part that she actually liked about the freak off was just the time that she had spent with Sean Combs, and this being this one-on-one time that the two had with each other. She said that she had wanted Sean to know that the FOs made her...
What in the Stockholm Syndrome is going on here?
Or the freak offs had made her feel worthless, but essentially that Diddy dismissed her feelings. Diddy called her predictable. There was this one exhibit, an email exhibit that was shown where Cassie, her nickname under this email chain was BG standing for baby girl, and Diddy was referred to as Pop, which is kind of disturbing in itself because he was named Pop after her grandfather, and she thought it was weird and disrespectful. But from Diddy's point of view, this was something that he had...
I'm your new father figure.
Allegedly wanted. And so the subject of this email was, I really need to F. And
this is some dark triad maxing behavior.
This message from Pop to baby girl said, so who you gonna F, want to call someone? And so this email was around 2010, and so the response was that she wanted to F him and said, are you crazy? Because essentially when Diddy was receiving these messages, he just essentially assumed it was
Imagine calling that with the age gap too. Yeah, let's not forget that he's about 20 years older than her.
Going to be for a freak off. That means other people were going to be involved, whereas from Cassie's point of view, she was kind of making the argument that she just wanted to spend time with her partner at the time, her boyfriend at the time. And so there was kind of a back and forth.
Yeah, but your boyfriend is a freak of nature. He's Epstein pilled.
Just about that Cassie had wanted to talk to Diddy about something, and that Diddy had called her predictable because that she didn't want to, assuming that she didn't want to participate in these freak-offs, and essentially that she said that from her standpoint, she didn't want Diddy to think that she didn't want to do it anymore, even though she didn't want to do it anymore, but essentially did it to make him happy. But even throughout these freak-offs, they were talking about disguised identity, that Diddy would wear a hat, he covered his face, he wore a mask, Cassie would even wear a mask, kind of one of those masquerade masks.
Now we're talking about some eyes wide shut type shit. See? I can't show that. Don't ban me, please.
She would wear a wig, she would wear...
It's art, it's art, it's literally art.
Nets. She would wear very tall heels, she...
Fuck you, Stanley Kubrick.
Kind of even made the comparison to them being kind of like stripper heels. And essentially, those were the disguise portion. The only time that they had kind of taken off the mask, taken off the disguises, was when they felt comfortable enough to do it with an escort. Because you have to remember, around this time, they were a little worried that one of these escorts could possibly be a cop. One of these escorts could possibly be somebody who would go and tell the entire world that they had done something with, Sean Combs and Cassie Ventura at the time.
Holy shit. Thank you. Look at this. This looks delicious. Damn. Thank you. That was quick. Are you going to have a glizzy? Mm-hmm. Nice. 2. Are you waiting for me to try it?
You know I always watch you have the first bite.
Okay. Let's check this out. 10 out of 10. Needed that.
Time. And so she was talking about how these freak-offs happen a lot of different places, including all of Diddy's homes except his home at Maple. Freak-offs happened in her home except her Studio City home. They had freak-offs in New York and Miami and Los...
I was trying to make a point by showing a legendary film by a legendary director. If you guys haven't seen Eyes Wide Shut, you really should. Because, honestly, it predicted the whole Diddy Epstein freak-off craze. A lot of people thought that conspiracy theorists were running wild with elites participating in extravagant sex parties, clandestine rituals of mass sexualization and degeneracy. But no, they actually happen. And based on the description, it seems like it's not that far off either.
Los Angeles and Atlanta and Turks and Caicos and Vegas, and she named the hotels that she could remember doing these freak-offs at, because it wasn't just at Diddy's homes, it wasn't just at Cassie's homes, they were in hotels as well too, and just how the staff would kind of help provide things that they had needed for these freak-offs, such as condoms, such as Johnson & Johnson's baby oil, such as candles, such as lube, such as Astroglide, and that essentially all the participants use baby oil. This seems like a very big preference that Diddy had kind of had. And I know a lot of people kind of make jokes about it, but you know, for the most part, it does seem like a prevalent thing that was very prominent in these freak-offs, and that a lot of bottles of baby oil were used, to the point she said 10 bottles were used in probably one freak-off, which...
What? 10 bottles of baby oil?
Is a lot of baby oil if you really think about it. She said, you know, the Astroglide was used as lube, as freak-off, something that she had even talked about in her civil suit against Combs. She said when they had run out of these...
It's crazy to think that there were various locations where these freak-offs took place. Imagine you book a family vacation. You want to go visit Florida, maybe go see Mickey Mouse, and you get put up in the freak-off room, not knowing the depths of hell that were reached couple hours prior to your arrival.
Types of supplies that the staff would get more, the staff being the assistants would get more, or they would ask the bell desk for more at Diddy's direction. The candles were always lit. There were about 6 to 10 candles inside these rooms. There was even a point that she had mentioned that candle wax would be poured onto her. It would be poured onto Diddy. She said studio lights were later used and these freak-offs, and that they were red and purple and blue. Then we were shown a photo with Diddy. It looked like he was kind of laying on something. According to Cassie, had a handful of cash in his hand that we couldn't see through this exhibit photo, but he was kind of laying in a red room. And so she said the freak-off rooms were particularly warm, according to her. And then this was kind of one of the more, you know, disturbing points that were talked about through her testimony, about them using extra linen not to soil the sheets in these hotel rooms.
Oh, thank God. Oh.
Why? Because there were points where blood and urine were going to be soiled into these fabrics, essentially. She said that she was even expected to have freak-offs while she was on her menstrual cycle. That
Ew!
Diddy and an escort would urinate on her, and that she didn't.
The forbidden golden shower, dude.
Want to be urinated on. She said it was a turn-on for Combs, but for herself, she felt humiliated going through this. Said it was overwhelming.
How do you even find this hot? And people have the audacity to ask me, do you goon? Chad, this is what gooning does. So many people get one-shotted by it, and especially people with unlimited resources.
She said at one point she began even choking on the urine. And again, these are just very, very hard things to kind of listen to. And me even repeating them, I'm just kind of a little just unwell, just because it's really a lot, Jesse. I'm not going to even lie to you. And, you know, she was...
Sexual degeneracy of this magnitude is unequivocally linked to extreme violence.
Saying I didn't want anyone to urinate on me, and she said this didn't really necessarily happen often, but it was often enough for her. And you know, these were just very humiliating things, and you could tell that she was very soft-spoken throughout her testimony, so it was probably very uncomfortable for her to kind of talk about this, one in an open courtroom, one in front of Diddy, as well as even her husband and her brother. And
dude, Diddy probably fucking pitched a tent. He's probably reliving nostalgic memories. Probably walked out of the courtroom with a limp.
Her mother, who were all inside that courtroom, and she was very soft-spoken throughout this, but essentially that the staff would clean up the aftermath of these events. They would be charged thousands of dollars just for the damage that were done to it. She said half the time she said she was high on drugs during these while she was being urinated on. She said she didn't say no because she thought it was obvious that she didn't want to even do this. So it was a lot of graphic details, a lot of things. And surprisingly, I didn't see much of the jury kind of shake when this kind of testimony was going on.
Got it all on film. Watch it all the time.
They were very much so kind of looking at Cassie very intently, very much listening to her. I would think that, maybe somebody would get emotional or anything like that. But from what I could see, because my view was also very limited, I will also say that. But from what I could see, the jury didn't really flinch to this very disturbing testimony, this very hard testimony to listen to. But it seemed like they were just kind of absorbing everything that was being testified to. But from their perspective, I didn't see much of a reaction to this. But from us in the gallery, I know a lot of people were just kind of like, whew, this is a lot today.
So the jury loves golden showers. Got it. Sadomasochistic voyeurism. That's exactly what this is. Getting called predictable, I guess that's horrifying to some.
And the urination might not even be the most disgusting point. I'll tell everybody, we're not going to repeat it here. Something that was reported about Sean Combs' nipples. You want to check it out? Go check it out on your own. It's pretty disgusting.
I need to know. Sean Diddy Combs' nipples. Let's see here. Wow. Okay. According to Ventura, freak-offs were highly choreographed. First, Ventura and the escort would rub baby oil on each other and masturbate while Combs instructed Ventura to comment on the escort. Describing somebody's penis to another male was awkward and humiliating, Ventura said. Then, Ventura and the escort would perform oral sex and then intercourse. Sometimes Combs would join in. Ventura said that at the end of the session, Combs would sometimes instruct the escort to ejaculate on Ventura's body and then tell Ventura to put the semen on his chest and his nipples. On the escort's nipples or on Diddy's nipples? Not gonna lie, that's a bit fruity.
Say the least. Yeah, I was going to ask you about the jury, not grimacing, not wincing, not looking like they wanted to throw up from half these details. But look, from a legal point of view, it does become a question, right? How on earth could someone consent to all this? 36, 48, 72 hours of these sexcapades, right? Where, the urination and the Astroglide and the baby oil. Then it also becomes the question for the defense, and I'm sure when they have an opportunity to cross-examine her, why didn't you leave?
I mean, the jury seems like it's been to at least one freak-off.
Did you speak up loud enough? Why would you allow this to happen? Why didn't you go to the police? These are going to be questions that I'm sure
they're important questions. I was scared of being called predictable.
Going to come up. But I do have to ask you now also, I think it was towards the end of the testimony, she was asked about the infamous 2016 videotape, right, of her purportedly being beat up by Sean Combs. It was the first piece of evidence the jury heard or saw yesterday, right, because we know a security guard testified.
This was brutal.
To it, authenticated it. What did she say about that incident in particular?
So the government obviously had talked about this Intercontinental Hotel video, one in their opening statement, two with the first witness on the stand.
Diddy is the #1 ranked competitive gooner.
And Cassie herself, when she got on the stand today, confirmed that she was leaving a freak-off when this violent encounter had happened at the Intercontinental Hotel.
Yo!
In Los Angeles. She said this happened while she was...
Was Diddy in a towel?
Trying to leave a freak off. We were shown a text from that day, just kind of earlier. It was between Diddy and Cassie. Diddy had asked her, so what are you going to do so I can plan the rest of my night? Cassie had responded, baby, I want to FO so bad, but I don't want to F myself up. What am I to do? And essentially, she had talked about this because she didn't want to mess up her body by partying, as she kind of sometimes referred to these freak offs as. She said that she didn't want to ruin a movie premiere that she was going to later on because she never had an opportunity to kind of enjoy things that she had worked hard for and didn't want to kind of mess herself up by being, because she had pointed to that she would be on a lot of drugs when she would be doing these freak-offs. But she said from her standpoint that she wanted to kind of have a clear mind when she were to go to this movie premiere. But essentially, she did participate in this, and she...
Dude, where was Cassie's family, bro?
Said that even before she kind of exited that room, that Sean had given her a black eye, and this was in between one of the freak-off sessions. So again, that's that portion of the freak-offs, not the entire thing or anything like that. And she said at a point where Diddy was distracted, she just left. And then she said everything just happened so quickly. Next thing she knew, she was thrown on the ground. So even from our perspective, we thought, the first punch was taken from outside outside of the hotel room. According to her perspective, that first punch was happening inside that hotel room. And so she ran out of the door from what we had previously seen. She said from her standpoint, next thing she knew, she was thrown to the ground. The prosecution asked, why did she run out without some shoes? Because when we had first seen the video, even from the CNN portion, which was sped up, we had seen her kind of putting on her shoes. She was just in her socks from what it looked like, but she was putting on her shoes inside that elevator.
Dude, top 3. I was going to say top 10. No, the top 3. Biggest nightmare. You're essentially a sex slave, and you see a window of opportunity to escape the goon dungeon, and Diddy starts sprinting at you at the Holiday Inn in a towel and drags you back by your foot.
Kind of hallway. She said she doesn't remember what Sean had told her exactly while he was hitting her. The government then played the video for her, and I was surprised at how she kept her composure just kind of while on the stand. But from her standpoint, this was just one of many physical violent encounters that she had had with Diddy while the two were together. So she confirmed that it was she and Diddy inside in that video. Said that Diddy had thrown her to the ground multiple times before. She said she stayed on the ground because we all remember kind of after that first hit that she had just kind of stayed there, just laid there on the ground. Just the image in my head right now, again, just it's a lot of heavy stuff today. She said she stayed on the ground because it was the safest place to be. She said that she didn't fight back when Diddy had hit her. She said she picked up a hotel phone while Diddy had held her purse and overnight bag. So essentially,
there's no other way to describe this other than like a demonic power control fetish. How do you become this evil?
She had said that she didn't fight back when Diddy had hit her. That kind of the last few moments of this testimony from today, that she had picked up a hotel phone while Diddy had held her purse and overnight bag, and that was kind of the stopping point when it came to the government kind of showing her this video. So I expect when they return tomorrow, this will definitely be something that will be asked about again, and probably going into more depth about it again, because Emily Johnson said that she expects for Cassie Ventura to stay on the stand for pretty much half of the next day as well, too.
Diddy has like 8 fetishes, it seems. He's got every single one. All the different tabs that you can sort by? He must click every single one.
So that's halfway through Wednesday, and then they expect her cross to last up until Thursday at the minimum. And so Cassie Ventura still has a long amount of time to still be on the stand. Still definitely
repressed sexual anxiety from being gay. I mean, that could definitely play a part in it.
Hours worth. But, from her perspective, it was definitely just kind of hard to kind of listen to her.
Let's just say that certainly would not help.
Mainly because, I said this yesterday, Jesse, that from the most part, we had heard these allegations, through attorney statements, through court filings.
I mean, clearly it could have been a bit more repressed.
Filings and that sort, but to hear these things from her herself, to see her on the witness stand, to see her keep her composure, but even still at some points kind of had to just break emotionally, because it's a lot of things and a lot of hard things to recall. It's a lot of hard things for us to listen to, and so from her perspective, I can only imagine kind of what she's going through. On top of
he seems bisexual, like he'll just goon with anyone. That's true gooner behavior.
Being very down the line in her 3rd trimester, and there were even points, she was kind of rubbing her belly. Maybe that was something that kind of helped calm her down.
Dude, the fact that she's pregnant too, the poor woman has to relive all this on the stand.
Or just gave her some type of comfort. But, today was a very hard day just to kind of listen to this testimony, and yet we still have more hours to go with it as well, too.
Yeah, and look.
Everyone who knew Diddy always felt uncomfortable around, so how the fuck did Cassie get drawn to this maniac without a gut feeling? It seems like she was very young and impressionable, and he had a power dynamic over her. I don't know anything about her support system in terms of family and friends. There's a lot of unanswered questions, but it does make you think, like, God.
That cross-examination will take quite some time to get through. I imagine tomorrow it's going to be
Maybe there's explicit blackmail. I mean, there has to be. The shit was recorded.
Discussion of the videotapes, these purported videotapes of sexual encounters, freak-offs. Will the gallery actually see them or not? We shall see. It probably, if I had to guess, it's going to be a situation where only the jury will be able to see and hear that, as well as...
She was signed with his label, yes. We established that. That's, you just gotta get out of there. I don't know.
Witness, and they'll be very careful in how they question her about this, because I think the risk of this getting out and being published is pretty high, and I think that they want to minimize that risk. Because when people get attached to a partner like that, they just ignore red flags. These flags weren't even red. They were neon glow in the dark. As much as possible. This is a difficult day, Elizabeth. I know it's not... Yeah, apparently he blew up Kid Cudi's Porsche, too. Not easy to hear this, but really, really appreciate you. Just a fucking Gotham villain. Spending the time in the courtroom, capturing everything as possible, relaying to our audience in as much detail as possible, because unfortunately there are... What am I looking at, dude? No cameras. There is no audio. We have the transcripts, but it's not the same. And to hear you describe her testimony the first time... These are pirate flags. There's literally a skull and crossbones on it. That Cassandra Ventura made a substantial response to everything that has been going on. To me, it read almost verbatim her complaint that she filed against Sean Combs in November of 2023. And to hear her talk about the infamous CNN video, this is a pivotal day in this case, in what is an 8-week trial. And thank you so much for relaying to us all those details. Elizabeth Milner, great as always. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Jesse.
And that's all we have for you right now here on Sidebar, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. And as always, please subscribe on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you should get your podcasts. I'm Jesse Weber. I'll speak to you next time. I fear that this is just one chapter in this entire freak-off saga. And we'll be tuning in every single day. Call it your daily dose of Diddy.